Hello, my friends. How are you? I'm thrilled that you are joining us today. It's getting cooler finally in New York. I mean, I thought the last 2 weeks were the weeks from hell. Today with you, we have for you an interview with one of my really favorite people running for office this year. You've met a couple already. He's running in New York's 19th district, if I'm right, Josh.
That's
Josh
right.
Crowley. He's a fifth generation upstate New Yorker, bona fide working class credentials going back generations in his family. Sort of his issues are the champion of the working class. He went to, of course, all the good ones, William and Mary and Harvard, Paul. The Department of Labor, he was general counsel for Senator Al Franken, an intern for Ted Kennedy. And he has been in court fighting for equal rights, the Dreamers, the Muslim ban, domestic violence, and veterans. He is one of the most qualified people I know that's running this year, and especially on issues that are of great concern to me personally. Josh, welcome. Why are you running?
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity, and to all your viewers, thanks so much for joining us and spending some time. Yeah, it's the big question. Why are you running? I get a version of this, which is, what are you, crazy? Running for Congress? It's so divided and it's so dysfunctional, and why would anybody want to do that? And my answer to that question is because it's so divided and it's so dysfunctional, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think we're facing really, really big challenges as a country right now and as upstate New Yorkers. And I also see a lot of those challenges as really big opportunities to improve our society and make life better for working folks. And so I'm really, I think there's some big fights where we need to show up in November, win this election, and take control in Congress. There's also a lot of areas where I think we can bring people together to make a lot of progress. So I reject the notion that we should reward a politics where people are rewarded for saying the craziest things the loudest on the extremes, and get back to a place where we're treating each other with some civility, taking on the big fights where we have to, and getting deals done where we can.
I forgot to mention your primary is very close. It's August 23rd and then on to November. So if you're in the 19th district, don't forget to vote either absentee or go in person and vote for Josh. Josh, you're bona fides on working class. Everyone says I come from a poor family, I'm working class, but your father worked in a shoe factory. You really genuinely have fought for the working class, a domestic violence suit you filed to protect, especially working class women. Uh, the working class has been going increasingly towards Donald Trump, what have been reliable Democratic voters. How do we get him back?
Yeah, it's a great question, and those are my roots, and have informed a lot of my career. I grew up in a working class neighborhood in Endicott, New York, and one of the things that I think is really special, the shoe factory that founded my hometown actually built houses for the workers. I grew up in one of those houses. IBM was then founded in my hometown, and my family for generations worked in the IBM plants. My dad was actually a maintenance worker there, and it was the conversations we had around the kitchen table growing up that have informed a lot of the work I've done in my career and my approach to running for Congress. It was very rarely the conversations around the kitchen table, the inside baseball, inside the beltway things about who's up and who's down in Washington. It was questions about, it was conversations about, rolling coins to pay for the family vacation that year, or balancing the budget to get the school closed in time for the start of school. And one of the lessons I learned from that is it's less about Democrat, Republican, red, blue for a lot of working families. And the question is more about change versus the status quo. And I think this probably explains a lot of what we saw with Donald Trump's popularity in some of these communities. Washington just has not been working for working folks for a long time. And when an opportunity arises to choose something radically different versus the status quo, a lot of folks in communities that have been sold out and overlooked are going to take change. And I actually think that's going to help us in this campaign. I've never run for Congress before. I've never run for anything before. I'm a new voice, I'm new leadership, and I think a lot of people on both sides of the aisle want that.
You also represent a district that includes a good portion of the lower Catskills. Some of them, having lived up in Turkey Hollow,
Yeah.
some of the most environmentally beautiful areas that New York has to offer. Uh, Climate change, lack of rain, droughts, flooding. How do you protect the Catskills in this environment? How do we not get overlooked here in New York?
Yeah, it's so true. And it's not just some of the most beautiful areas in New York. I think it's some of the most beautiful areas in the world, from the shores of Cayuga Lake over here in Ithaca to the top of Hunter Mountain in Greene County. We have rolling farmlands across Cortland and Shenango down to the Delaware River in Sullivan County. It is a beautiful, beautiful area, and we need to protect it. We have huge challenges that we're facing right now with respect to environmental conservation and fighting climate change. I think about this every day. My son is 2 years old, and one of the big reasons I'm running for Congress is because I want to leave him with a much better future, including a functioning democracy, a planet that's habitable. One of the things I'm really, really excited about here, everybody understands, I think, or should understand, that climate change is a huge, huge challenge. What I remind people is that here in upstate New York, it's also an amazing economic opportunity. And I believe that over the next several years, we can put upstate New York at the forefront of innovation and industry, making the technologies that are going to save the planet from climate change. We have had so many breakthroughs and advancements in our university system here, and now we've got to take those and put them out onto the factory floor and start building those technologies, whether it's solar panels or batteries that store clean energy. So the climate crisis is both that, it's a climate crisis, but here in upstate New York, we've also got to look at it as an opportunity as well.
One of the things that when the radical right, which is basically the Republican Party these days, can't deal with issues like climate change and jobs and environment, they go to social issues like gay marriage, voting against insulin cuts. You have been a champion. You and your wife has been a champions for a long time of LGBTQ plus rights. I trust we can count on you in the future.
Yeah, you absolutely can. I'm a strong yes vote on the Equality Act. I'm a strong yes vote on codifying marriage equality into federal law. I'm terrified by what we just saw with the Dobbs decision. It's both horrifying what that decision said about women's equality and women's reproductive freedom. I want to be very clear on this. Women's healthcare decisions are women's healthcare decisions. They're not the government's decisions. They're not politicians' decisions. They're not Clarence Thomas's decisions. And they're certainly not the decisions of a bunch of Trump-appointed Supreme Court justices. That is terrifying in its own right. If you read through Clarence Thomas's dissent, it's even more alarming, because what he is arguing for is a complete unraveling of the civil rights movement in this country, starting with marriage equality and going after the most vulnerable populations in this country. And so I will be there with you as a very strong champion for LGBTQ plus rights, including the Equality Act and including marriage equality, including a whole host of other issues.
Uh, do you think compromise and centrist are bad words in politics?
I really don't. I really reject the notion that compromise and moderation and pragmatism are bad things. In fact, I think we need a lot more of them in our politics. Look, there are some big fights where we have principles and we're not going to compromise on our principles. We just talked about a couple of them. When it comes to protecting women's reproductive freedom, there's not a compromise there. There's right and wrong, and we're going to stand on the side of right. When it comes to the simple proposition that love is love, there's a right and wrong on that, and we're going to stand on the side of right. I'll note, by the way, my opponent in the November for the general election has different views than me on these things. He had voted against codifying Roe v. Wade in New York. He's voted against marriage equality multiple times. So there are some big fights and there are some lines in the sand. It's also simultaneously true that there are so many places where Democrats and Republicans can come together, find common ground, and work together. I worked as counsel in the United States Senate at a time when Washington was very dysfunctional, very divided. It was a time when actually Ted Cruz shut the government down over Planned Parenthood funding. It was that bad. And even in that divided environment, I was able to bring the parties together and work on legislation that got signed into law. And so I know that can be done, and that's the approach I'm going to take to this job.
Well, I'm going to wrap up with two short questions.
Yeah.
One, at 6'6", any tips for tall people how to sit and coach?
Yeah, it's funny. We were driving back last night. I had a wonderful event with Pat Ryan, who's running for a special election. He's then going to run in New York's 18th district. I'm a huge fan of Pat Ryan's. Folks who live down there, make sure you get out and vote for Pat. I went out to an event to support him in his special election last night over in Columbia County, and on the ride back, my team and I took turns driving, and one of my teammates made fun of how awkward I look trying to drive the car because of the height and the seats and everything. So yeah, it's an issue.
The other question is, and it's not a question. I just want to say, your family's sacrificing a lot, and we owe your wife and your young son, a lot of gratitude. But your life has been a life of service, fighting for the rights of Muslims, the victims of domestic violence, especially our veterans, who also have sacrificed a lot. Can you explain for why in the world the Republicans are not even supporting our veterans?
It's really alarming what we saw with the PACT Act over the last couple of weeks. You referenced a case that I handled when I was a lawyer in private practice, representing veteran services organizations to help cut through a lot of the bureaucracy and the red tape that they often face trying to get the benefits that they earned and that they deserve and that we owe to them. We're in a scary time in this country. I never thought I would see a day where basic things that we all used to agree on, whether it's taking care of our veterans, whether it's the very tenets of our democracy, that those sorts of things would become politicized and polarized. And there's a lot of reasons to be cynical about our politics today. I hear it a lot as I travel around the district, but I also have so much hope that over time we will be reminded that we have way more in common than divides us, and that we'll be able to overcome these things. I really appreciate what you said about my family. We're all in this together. This is a team effort. I often say this is not my campaign. This is our campaign. And I mean that my family, my friends, supporters, folks like you who have just been incredibly helpful to me. And I'm really excited about the campaign we're building, and we're doing it because this is a challenging time in our country, and we're ready to step up and fight back.
Well, Josh, I can't thank your team enough. It is inspiring to see young people step to the plate. I mean, we all been whining about all the old guys and gals sticking around forever running for office. But there's a whole new crop of young people who have done what was right with their life and who are now running for office, and you're one of them. And I'm a big fan and really urge people who live in New York's 19th. I will put Josh's website down where you can both donate and find out if you're in the 19th. Yep. On August 23rd is the primary. Please vote for this man. This is exactly the kind of people we have been looking for to run for office. Break a leg on the 23rd. I will be holding my breath until then. We are all so proud of you. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.